Hey, Sharrfinn here. Nice to meet you. I've managed to get Dehya by winning the 50-50 that I had. And it's funny too, since when 3.5 was released, I constantly told myself, hey, save up the Prima Gems, save it up for something else, because maybe I want to get some other future character that I really like. But the thing is when I played her character story, right, and I went through it, I kind of lost to my temptation here because I like her character story, and I was like, okay, wow, I really like her, so why don't I go ahead and go for her? And I got her, which I'm really happy about. I really like Dehya and the animations that came with her. Her design's cool, and the character story that came along with her is good. Like I said, I had a nice time with it. I like her a lot, and would love to use her a lot more. But it's just that the way that she was designed, um, it's really hard to use her as much as I want to. Dehya has a lot of problems, but let me stop myself before I start going into a rant. I just want to go over her skills and all that other stuff for anyone who needs a refresher. So if you already know what she does and you know for sure what she does, go ahead and just skip to my thoughts if you want to see what I think, right? Anyway, why don't I go ahead and start this? As you level up Dehya, her ascension stat that goes up with her is her HP percent, which when you look at her overall kit, it makes sense, but as I'm going to get into, I think it would have been better if they actually balanced HP percent and attack percent instead of going full on for HP percent here, because her HP stat at level 90 is the highest for any Claymore character and for any character who scales off of HP percent, which I'm pretty sure she has the highest HP. I could be wrong about that though. Her base attack though is the lowest compared to any 5-star Claymore character, with it at 265 at level 90. Her other stats don't really do anything for the rest of her kit, but here they are anyway. Her normal attacks first off look great visually. When I first saw Dehya, I thought her kit would revolve around her normal attacks. Though you can't use her normal attacks as a main source of DPS, it at least looks nice. The first two attacks in the animation have this nice weight to it, with the second attack having a very crunchy sound that sells the impact of the hit whenever it hits the ground. The third attack, she uses the Claymore to bash just right into the enemy. And for her last attack, she throws away her Claymore and just straight up punches whoever's in her way, which I'm really happy. I don't know why. I've always wanted a character who just punches. It seemed cool to me, and it's on her, and I like her even more because of that. Now, compare her normal attacks to other Claymore characters. She has a lot more weight to it, which I'm really happy about, because the other Claymore characters, whenever I use them, they're a lot more fluid, which, hey, it's cool, that's alright, it's fine to have, but what I expected from a Claymore is some heavy-hitting, big damage type of thing, and Dehya's normal attacks look like it'll hurt a lot. But that's completely different from what it actually does. Why don't we go ahead and start talking about her scaling? Dehya's normal attack scaling is really bad, and it's surprising too considering her character is a mercenary who uses the Claymore quite a bit. Here's her scaling from level 1 to level 10. And compare that to other characters who you would think Dehya would have an advantage over. Yeah, just understand that you aren't going to be using Dehya's normal attacks as a main source of DPS. You're going to be using other parts of her kit. Her E-skill, Molten Inferno, has two different parts to it depending on if Fiery Sanctum is out at the time. If Fiery Sanctum isn't out and it's a fresh cooldown, you will use Indomitable Flame. This deals AoE pyro damage and places down the Fiery Sanctum right in front of Dehya. If Fiery Sanctum has already been placed and it still exists, she will instead use Ranging Flame. Dehya will perform a jump attack which deals more AoE pyro damage than the Indomitable Flame and also replaces the Fiery Sanctum. The Fiery Sanctum here won't have its duration reset, but will instead inherit the previous Sanctum's duration. Now, you can actually tell the difference between a new Fiery Sanctum and a replaced one from this middle part right here. The new one is small, as you can see, while the replaced one is much bigger. The damage from both of these attacks is just counted as skill damage. It does not scale off of a HP or attack. Now, Fiery Sanctum itself. Fire Sanctum is this area right here. The area itself is the same size as Albedo's E-skill and is also in a cylinder shape. It deals a coordinated attack that deals AoE pyro damage. The damage itself scales off of attack and HP and can only be triggered every 2.5 seconds. Here's the scaling for it, and without C0, it leans heavily into attack percent more than HP percent, which is confusing. It has a duration of 12 seconds, and its cooldown is 20 seconds, so you have a downtime of 8 seconds, which is quite worrying. It doesn't just have damage though, because active characters inside Fiery Sanctum have their damage mitigated and also increases resistance to interruption. Dehya also takes a portion of the damage mitigated and stores it inside Redmane's blood. The damage from Redmane's blood then slowly damages Dehya over 10 seconds. The damage stored itself cannot exceed 200% of Dehya's max HP. Once it reaches that limit, she will stop mitigating damage. You can tell if Dehya's taking damage from Redmane's blood if she has this little triangle thingy right next to her. So yeah, that's a pretty cool detail. Her burst, Leon on Bite, starts off with Dehya entering the Blazing Lioness state, which lasts 4 seconds. This increases resistance to interruption, and while in this state, she will auto-attack with her Flame Main Fists, which deals pyro damage. At the end of the duration, she will unleash Incineration Drive, which is just a pyro attack that deals more damage than the punch attacks. All the damage from her burst scales off of her attack and HP, and honestly, the auto attacks do look nice. I really like how at the end of her burst, she actually puts out the fire that's on her feet, which is a nice touch. During her burst, you can actually affect the rate at which she attacks. If you leave it, it'll just, attack normally and slow, and you don't want that. So you want to spam the attack button as hard as you can to punch as fast as you can, okay? Just do that. But do note that you can actually cancel the burst if you just jump. Honestly, seriously, if you jump, you can cancel the burst, which I will complain about later in the video. If there is a Fiery Sanctum of your own creation that exists at the moment, on release of her burst, she will retrieve the Sanctum into her fists or something and do her auto attacks until it expires. When it expires, she will then place down the Sanctum. While the Sanctum is retrieved, it does not affect the duration, and the same thing as Flaming Range, the previous duration is inherited. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to her passives. Her first passive is Unstinting Sucre. Within 6 seconds after retrieving Fiery Sanctum through either Ranging Flame or Leon on Bite, she will take 60% less damage when receiving damage from Redmane's blood. This can be triggered every 2 seconds. But that's not all! Within 9 seconds of unleashing Indomitable Flame, she will further increase characters' resistance to interruption when inside Fiery Sanctum. This can be triggered every 18 seconds. Her second passive, Stalwart and True, when her HP is less than 40%, Dehya will recover 20% of her max HP and will continue to restore 6% of her max HP every 2 seconds for the next 10 seconds. This can only be triggered every 20 seconds. In total, the HP recovered is 50% HP. And her third and last passive, the Sunlit Way, increases movement speed by 10% during the day. Similar to Rosaria's, but the opposite, alright? It doesn't work in domains, and all that, other stuff.
They cut me.
Alright, let me start finally talking about Dehya herself, or at least my thoughts on her. One thing to understand about Dehya is that she doesn't have a solid role on all the teams she's a part of, due to her overall kit having massive flaws and not synergizing as well as it could together. I'm going to skip over her normal attack scaling because, hey, maybe that wasn't the main part of her kit. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense considering her character is a mercenary who probably uses the Claymore quite a bit compared to the other characters who have it better than her. But, I want to talk about more important stuff, so let's go ahead and do that. First, her scaling for her E-skill is just horrible. Her stats go all in for HP with an Ascension stat of HP percent, which would have been perfectly fine if her E-skill scaling went all in for HP like other characters, Kokomi, Yellen, Hu Tao, Ni Lao. But the problem is that it doesn't commit to it, but instead goes for a hybrid of attack and HP, which doesn't match up with their stats at all. That isn't the only problem though, her skilling leans more in favor of attack. Having an attack percent sans is a better option than an HP percent for higher damage at C0. This just doesn't match up with what her stats are trying to do. And this is only one of the minor issues that I have with their E-skill. One of the bigger problems is whenever I use Dehya on whatever team she's a part of, she requires too much attention for her E-skill, with me having to take note of her cooldown and the duration of it. Her 12 seconds is just way too short for what her E-skill does. And because it's so short, I usually have to use her last on the rotation when she should be like Nahida, Albedo, Raiden, characters who I would use first on the rotation because they have a long duration. It also doesn't help that her downtime for the E-skill disrupts the team flow. There are times where I'm rotating between characters, and normally I wouldn't have problems with different characters. But with Dehya here, there's always her cooldown that has 1 to 3 seconds left, and it just makes me stop what I'm doing to wait for her cooldown. And yeah, I know, C2 does exist, but I still have problems with it. Even with C2, you still have some downtime, and the fact that it's locked behind a constellation is just extremely greedy coming from MiHoYo. There's also the fact that her mitigation, damage, and coordinate attack for her E-skill just isn't enough. Her mitigation is too low, and 90% of the time you'll need a main healer with her. This would be fine if her damage was good, and the coordinate attack triggered at 1 second instead of the 2.5 seconds that it has. That way she would have more uses beyond just a 50% damage mitigation. But because the damage is so low and the 2.5 second coordinate attack is too long, it takes away multiple uses on different teams, such as a Burgeon team, a Vape team, and even a Burning team if you ever want to use that. Her E-skill just doesn't make any sense to me because I can't see how anyone saw this and was like, alright, she looks fine, let's just go ahead and release her this way. And those were problems I had with her E-skill alone, alright? Let me talk about her burst, and don't worry, there isn't as much to talk about compared to the E-skill. Her burst you must use with her on field inactive. It doesn't fit with what her E-skill does, which is a damage mitigation and resistance interruption off field. It's purely a DPS burst that for some reason has the option to replace her E-skill, but it doesn't do anything with that. Not to mention that it has a high cost of 70 and you can't generate enough energy for it with its E-skill. So you can't even rely on it for main DPS uses. Whenever I have Dehya on my team as a sub DPS slash tank, I never use her burst because it never adds anything to it, and for the most part takes away DPS that I could have done with my main DPS. It also doesn't make sense why her constellations decide to buff the burst when it should have clearly gone for utility to help boost her E-skill. Then there's her passives. Her passives wouldn't be bad at all if Redmane's Blood took a more primary role in her kit. If you had to purposely build up Redmane's Blood, her passives would be fantastic and would help Dehya out, but you don't build that up on purpose. You're not going to be taking damage to, have Dehya take even more damage, right? This makes her passives kind of useless because whenever you use Dehya, you aren't relying on her for her tanking abilities like Zhongli. You have to bring some type of main healer to help her out. And because you have some main healer, you're always higher than 50% HP with Dehya. There's also the fact that she has so much HP that's hard to die to her E-skill with her. And lastly, her constellations, which I quickly want to complain about. I'm only going to be talking about C1 and C2 here. Why is C1 like this? You gain an increase of damage based off of her max HP. Why isn't this just, normal? Why isn't, this a part of her just normal scaling for her E-skill and her burst? This is something that shouldn't have been behind a constellation at all and should have been scaled normally like this. This is just incredibly greedy on MiHoYo's part. And then there's C2. Why isn't this a passive? This should be a passive. This shouldn't be stuck behind a constellation. This is such an important part of her kit that should have just been a part of her passives. I don't know. It's behind a constellation. Money, they want money. MiHoYo, sorry, they're a $1 billion company. They need money. Okay. I'm just really annoyed with how she was actually, thought out. Dehya's a cool character, right? But the way that, they made her makes her one of the worst characters in the game. And it makes me worry about any future characters that do come out. I used to save up a ton for a favorite character I saw in the story that hasn't been released yet, right? And then spend all my Primo Gems just right away on them. But now I kind of have to worry about whether or not they're actually usable. Because if I have a favorite character and I like their design, I would love to see more of them, right? But if they aren't even usable or easily replaceable and frustrating to use, it makes me see a lot less of the character on my teams, which I don't want that happening with my favorite character, right? There are other problems that I do have with her, like the amount of glitches that I've seen online and other small things, but I just wanted to talk about my main complaints. I just hope that in the future she does get buffed either directly or indirectly, but I don't think that's going to happen at all. I want to thank everyone who's made it this far for watching. I do have plans to make a video on that new Claymore from the Windbloom event and also my review on the Windbloom event. That's about it. I do stream on Twitch. You can go ahead and check me out. Same name, link in the description, and all that good stuff. You guys have a good one, and I'll see you another time. Peace.